All right, Lions fans, let's talk Lions. Uh, I'm gonna do something what I should have done initially in the first video was give I guess a prelude or no, preview or introductory of myself. Not a preview, not a prelude, but an introductory of myself. I started this channel because I had an opinion about the Lions, and my take was never to be informative about X's and O's or to really be thorough about knowing football, but it's more so what I've grasped over the years of watching successful teams and so forth, and wanted to actually see the Lions take a shot at demonstrating some of the things that I've saw other franchises was able to do. With that said, I'm not a Lions fan because how they have done how how they treated the franchise over time, and maybe there may be a different shift coming now. They seem to be turning the table, turning a new leaf. But I wanted to say that because it's kind of significant to this video about the video is targeting should the Lions go after Kenny Galladay, re-sign him, and I've had my change of mind with that decision. Yeah, sometimes I said first of all I said no, then I came around and said yeah, and then now I'm looking at it like there could be another option that's available for the same amount that the investment could be for Kenny Galladay. So um, I, 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 it's interesting of the direction where Miss Hamp is going. It's interesting where she's taking this team, and I want to say from the last past three owners, of course, that's in house, but each one of them have done it a little differently than the next. Each one of them were breaking down. Well, when Mr. Ford bought the team, he stamped it his way. But since then, his wife done it a little differently, and now their daughter is doing it differently. So the way that it was done originally, when I'm okay, going back to myself, when I started watching the Lions, is back when they had Billy Sims. Billy Sims was my guy. I wasn't, and even to this day, I'm not much of a Barry Sanders fan. I am a Billy Sims fan first. And he's the reason why I watched the Lions until I got a hold of Jerry Rice. And when I got a hold of Jerry Rice, I left the Lions altogether. I followed the 49ers, the duration of Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott, and that core, I believe all the way up to the mid 90s, maybe all the way up to the point when Mariucci took over, when he had Garrison Hurst, Terrell Owens, and stuff like that. And then I left the 49ers, and then I left the Lions. But I say all that to say that I'm not a Lions fan based upon how the structure and the direction of as an organization, as a franchise, that it was being delivered to the fans first, but ultimately is as being respectable. And I believe the approach up under the Billy Sims, even Barry Sanders time, it wasn't really made for winning. It was just more so, hey, it's a hobby, something to do. So I really wasn't the decision they would make. It just didn't make any sense. So I stopped being a fan because it wasn't going to. The more I was opt, being optimistic about the situation, the more that I found myself being more disappointed. So I became one of those critics based on having my opinion about what I like with the steps that they're doing or what I believe that they could do. I don't go by statistics too much unless it's like a point of emphasis. And what I mean by that is like to make my point. I'm not going to go back. Well, of course, a person may say that's obvious. But what I mean by that is I'm not doing it to prove a person right or wrong. I'm doing it to show my point of view of my opinion of the individual. Not as a to go past statistics. I use this. How about this? I use the statistics to go past statistics for the person who's listening to use their eyeball versus numbers. For example, if I were to use Matthew Stafford as the example, which is he's the target for optimism or criticism. He is the target. So because he is actually the athlete that was caught in the middle of the road of himself. Do he want to be great or do he want to just be a quarterback? He's caught in the middle. So sometimes you would get him being great, then he would go back to being just, ordinary. So that's why he gets a lot of criticism or a lot of optimism because if you're going to be optimistic about this team, he would give you somewhat of a glimpse of potential of going that direction. But if you want to be a critic or criticize his team, he could also give you that. So he basically is a target that can give you an array of different directions that you want to go. But I couldn't ride with him as my franchise quarterback. He was the Lions franchise quarterback. And I even made a video basically contradicting myself about when I stated that he wasn't a franchise quarterback. I turn around and say he was a franchise quarterback. He just wasn't my idea of a franchise quarterback. You could put a team on, you could build a team around him for 13 years, which is what they did. 13 years, which is what they did. But the reason why I say that he's not mine, because I don't know what I'm going to get from him. He's not consistent. And let me say it this way. In the areas that I would like for him to be consistent in, he's not. And the areas that I don't really care for him to be consistent at, that's where he succeeds at. When the pressure's off of him, he succeeds. I'm looking for a guy that when the pressure's on, he actually embraces it and really shows his true colors. Don't get me wrong, he's a guy that also would be, I'll give it a try. He's that type of guy. But anyway, moving past Stafford, and a fan will always talk about Stafford, regardless if let me say a fan or a critic would always talk about Stafford for that very self-same reason, because as a fan, he gave you a glimpse of optimism. But as a critic, he gave you a leeway to criticize him. He's a perfect target. This is from local media, national media. This is from fans from this locally, this on the outskirts. He's a good target. He's a good target. He's not like Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson. All right. Give me something bad that you can say about Barry, where he didn't do what? Well, he lost a good amount of yards, as much as he did gain, by scrambling, by emphasizing, and so forth. But then you could say, where was his holes at in the offensive line? So with Barry, you could say what? You don't really got much to play with, so that's why people don't really criticize Barry, because he gave you more of optimism than he did criticism. You could say the same thing with Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson gave you more of optimism than he did criticism. Matthew Stafford was a balance in between the two. So it's pretty much a roll of dice. You don't know what you're going to get. One day he can give you optimism that I can give you greatness, where he does a play like his first game, I believe, that he pops his shoulder back in and throws one touchdown. He gives you optimism that this is who he is. But then at the same time, he comes back down the next game or game or so, and he's looking around, and he's locking on his target receiver, or he holds on the ball so long that he gets a sack instead of throwing it out of bounds, or instead of him sliding, he tries to run through whatever to risk his body, whatever to get hurt, or in other words, put what he wanted to do versus what he can do for the team. So he gives you these moments of both ways, whatever. With that being said, that's my take on Stafford. Otherwise, I think Stafford is a quarterback. He's good for a quarterback ready team. And what I mean by that is the Rams situation is a perfect situation for him because it's a quarterback ready team. They don't need Matthew Stafford to be a franchise quarterback. They just need him just to be a quarterback. They don't need him to be like this savior or like this greatest of all time guy. They just need him just to be a quarterback. Somebody said, how can you say that? Well, they were actually winning with Jared Goff. Jared Goff is the same as Matthew Stafford. Somebody will say no because the numbers. No. Go by the eyeball test. Don't go by the skill set. Go by the eyeball test. They both do the same thing. They both give you a place for optimism, and they both give you a place for criticism. They are the same guy. When it comes to Tom Brady, he'll give you more optimism than criticism. When it comes to Peyton Manning, he give you more optimism than criticism. When it goes to Joe Montana, he give you more optimism than criticism. Those are guys who I consider as my type of franchise quarterback. They will give you more room to be optimistic because when that time comes for them to step up and to lead the charge, not just lead the charge in a rah-rah speech or something like that, but more so they play on the field, calms everybody else down. And the way they do it is like, well, we got this. We're gonna do something. I seen Joe Montana do it. I seen Tom Brady do it, and I seen Peyton Manning do it. I have never seen Matthew Stafford do it in crunch time because he at that time when say like for example when he do the 14 comebacks, that's his spotlight, but that's not a spotlight that he owned. That's a spotlight that he's thrust in. If you look at Joe Montana, if you look at Tom Brady, you look at Peyton Manning, they thrive in those situations. They look for it. I don't believe Matthew Stafford looked for those moments where it comes down to me to make that play. I believe it's like, well, this is a situation that I'm in, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. And it just so happened to work out the way it worked out for him. So that's what separation, from my opinion, from Stafford being elite or for my idea of a franchise quarterback. He can be a franchise quarterback. Apparently he was because he was here for 13 years. So apparently he was. He's just not my ideal. So case in point, when they had the opportunity to let him go last year, they chose not to. And they could have got what they could have got back in return, 2 first-round draft picks along with the first-round pick at number 3 overall. They could have way more flexibility. Maybe that's a good thing because a lot of people foreseeing that the implosion of the general manager, the previous general manager, and head coach, so maybe that's a good reason. Maybe that's a good thing that they didn't have those assets because they would actually build a team in their direction. But then again, it also could have been what the pieces that they needed. Let's say, for example, if you were able to get a quarterback, I don't know. I can't see that scenario working out. It's like if they was getting Miami's 2 first-round draft picks last year, they was pretty high from my understanding. Or they're probably the same range that they were now. So you probably got Tua, or you could have got Herbert, or you could have gotten somebody else of the sort. I don't think they would have got Tua because I don't believe Tua would have he didn't want to come here. He made that publicly known. So I believe they probably would have went after Justin Herbert. And if they would have got him, who knows if the results, how he turned out, where he was at in San Diego, he would have turned out the way it had been in Detroit. But you would have had a quarterback. Who knows if you would have drafted Okuda at number 3? Who knows? Because now you have flexibility. You could probably go with the offensive line because you got your quarterback. And now you're looking at more so how can we strengthen this offensive line to protect our new franchise quarterback and let's say hypothetically Herbert. So, but the point of what I'm saying is they had they had an option a year ago to do this, what they're doing now. And it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out with the new general manager. But with that being said, let's go to the main topic that I really, really, really would like to talk about is the re-signing of Kenny Galladay and why I wouldn't sign him now. And even I was conflicted or torn between sign him and unsign him. I'm going to make this my decision and say I wouldn't sign him. And I'm going to say that for one reason. Because I found his replacement. If I can get him, I found his replacement. Jared Goff is my quarterback for 2 years, if so. Unless they decide to get a trade or something like that, something else, a bold move happens, then so be it. But Jared Goff is the quarterback for at least 2 years. So I'm going to give him the best compliments I possibly can for him to succeed. Because if he does have those compliments, I've seen as far as he can go. He can go to the Super Bowl. I've seen how far he can go. If you give him the compliments that he had to make him successful, he can get you to the Super Bowl. Somebody could say, well, he had a defense. If you get him the compliments, what I'm saying, if you get him what he needs, he can get you to a Super Bowl. He may not win the Super Bowl, but that shouldn't be pinned on his shoulders, but he can get you to the Super Bowl. So Kenny Galladay's replacement for me is Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson by far. Allen Robinson by far. And somebody said that's a lot of money to spend on a receiver. Allen Robinson is what I wanted Kenny Galladay to be. You know, he's a gamer. Don't get me wrong, Kenny Galladay is a gamer to a Detroit level. Allen Robinson is a gamer to a Super Bowl level, like spotlight on me level. I'm about to go up against Jalen Ramsey. I'm finna go up against the best receivers because I want to go after them. You know, I think Kenny Galladay is Detroit level of success. Don't get me wrong, he could be successful with going to the Colts or going to with Tom Brady, going to anybody. He could be successful going with Aaron Rodgers. He could be. No, I'm not saying that won't question his skills. What he showed on the field with the eyeball test, you can see what he's capable of being. He's just not special to me. And what I mean by that, spotlight is on. I'm gonna talk it and I'm gonna walk it. When I look at Jalen Ramsey, he's brass, but he's brass in a way that I'm gonna walk it. I don't see one player on this team that has that. I'm gonna back up what I say. I see a lot of players on this team because this is the culture of the Lions. Have that, like I say now, but have times past it has been the culture of Lions that, well, I could say it because it sounds good, but I really don't have to back it up. So like we got the Lomas Brown prediction. We will win in Philadelphia, I believe is what he said. What happened? Never mind everybody else. What about his play? I'm not thinking about anybody else. You can't control everybody else on the field, but you can do something. What about your play? So that's one thing about Allen Robinson. When he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. Now, I like him for Jared Goff for the purpose of, or to compliment Jared Goff. He's shifty. He's fast. He had good route running. He had good hands. I don't need him to catch the 50-50 ball. I believe Jared Goff is a more accurate quarterback than Matthew Stafford is. So I need somebody to be, I don't want to say a pocket receiver, but more so, not pocket, position receiver. I need someone to basically know how to get open, know how to run routes, how to get separation and so forth. And Allen Robinson, for the money that I will pay Kenny Galladay, I will give it to Allen Robinson. Why? Because Allen Robinson is a compliment to T.J. Hockenson. Allen Robinson is a compliment to DeAndre Swift. Kenny Galladay is a compliment to Matthew Stafford. That's about it. That's about it. I guess you could say he's somewhat a compliment to T.J. Hockenson, but T.J. Hockenson can run the deep route as well as he can run the up underneath. Kenny Galladay is a deep ball threat without the deep ball threat speed. He's not Calvin Johnson to the way that I would like to be Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson can run. Okay, Calvin Johnson can put him in a slot. He could do the two-slam slot, slant and so forth, and and he could do all sorts of things such as that. But when you talk about that deep ball, when he catch it, he's gone. Kenny Galladay, you can catch him. So for the money that he's asking for, he's asking for that price for here with the Lions. And of course, if you get it somewhere else, he'll take it. But if he can get it from the Lions, because the Lions have a low ceiling for expectations. It's kind of like a desperate franchise. We get what we get, and it's the best that we have, so we try to do what we can to accommodate it. But when you get something that's very rare and special, that you don't do what it takes to keep it. So, like, for example, when 91 season came around, and that was kind of a special season, they didn't keep it together. They let it fall apart. Fast forward to a more current time, when Ndamukong Suh was here, he was special. He was a special talent. They chose not to keep him, regardless what people. What he did on the field is actually I don't condone it, but I'm not going to condemn him for it. Not because it gave the Lions an identity. It just simple fact that you're not going to treat us a certain kind of way. The Lions team as a franchise, which goes back to my point, why I couldn't bend, why I didn't allow myself to be a fan, particularly after Billy Sims. I watched through Herman Moore and Brett Perriman and Barry Sanders and Scott Mitchell. I watched through that time and Benny Blades and all that good stuff and Willie Clay. Actually, Big Play Willie. The name Big Play started with Willie Clay first before it became Darius Slay. It was Big Play Willie Clay before it was Big Play Darius Slay, for the record. But anyway, I I just couldn't follow them because they was more so we didn't care. Somebody say, how can you say that? Well, look how long they kept the people in upper management that showed you they didn't care. Now, I'm not going to say Miss Hamp actually cares more so because she fired Quinn and Patricia. That could be that could be a money move. That could be a business not a money move. That could be a business move. Well, I have my ticket holders. They're complaining, so you got to appease your ticket holders. So I get it. That's a business move. I don't think it's more sense. I don't still think it's about winning though. And even when they did the staff and all that good stuff, and that which is a turn of the tide. But it depends on it if how she still approaches it. Do you still want to be a contender, or do you just want to have a team? If you're going to be a contender, you go by whatever your strengths are. You go ahead and support it. So if you bring in a quarterback, say what is your strengths now? It's your offensive line. Your offensive line is your strength, right? So you build off of that. Why? Because you just brought in a new quarterback, and regardless if you keep it for 2 years or not, your strength of your offensive line is going to solidify your strength of your current quarterback or even the future quarterback. But it also gives you stability to give you an identity. The Lions' history of when it was successful came off of two reasons: their offensive identity in '91, or it was their defense identity back when they won 11-5 with the Dominican Sue. It's never both. So if you have close to finishing one position group, finish that. Don't go jump to nothing else. People say go to the defense. Finish what you started. Complete the offensive line. And with the remainder of the picks, you go to the defense. You get those hungry guys that's going to play off your best, that's going to complement your best defensive player. And you have to decide who is your best investment. Your best investment is the one you spent all the money on, Trey Flowers. Until this contract is available to be dumped or being traded or whatever the case may be, he is your best defensive player. So you surround him with defensive talent. That's through free agency, that's through the draft for this year. Next year is a different deal because a lot of those players that they brought in through the last regime could be let go. The ones that's on a high price, whatever, we haven't have to keep the dead cap and so forth, or have to be responsible, for the dead cap and all that good stuff. So you can let go of those. And then you also have a lot more pieces to do in the draft, as well as you have somewhat of a foundation, what kind of team that you have. That you have a year full of evaluating your players, and so forth. So I say all that to say, Allen Robinson is the guy that I would target. If I'm going to pay, if Kenny Galladay is asking for $19 million a year, I'll give $19 million to Allen Robinson before I give it to Kenny Galladay. Kenny Galladay is one-dimensional. That's that 50-50 ball. I don't need him for the 50-50 ball. If I'm going to pay you $19 million, I need you to be everything ball. I mean, you would really have to be my offense. If I'm going to pay you $19 million plus, I'm going to have to. No, he's asking that from the Lions standpoint because there's a reason why you have to overpay players to come here or to stay here, because they as a franchise, it's not about winning. Like, say for example, when the Pistons, the going to work crew was winning, people were taking pay cuts to be here because they wasn't just winning. It was how they was winning. They was winning as a team. They had a function. With the Lions, they're not really winning So you're gonna have to overpay a player to stay here because you're saying the player is saying you're asking me to forsake the opportunity to get some income at a very significant amount, and also with the possibility to win. So you have to accommodate me for losing. That's why they overpaid players through the years because the players are saying I'll come there because it's a job, but you're gonna have to overpay me to compensate me for losing. They already knew they was going to a losing franchise. They already knew it. It's not even if they came in with a speech that I'm optimistic. There's a new turn. I could turn over a new leaf. I could do it this way. They came in knowing they was going to a losing franchise based upon what they're going by the eyeball test. The eyeball test is like, where's their strengths at? It has no game plan. There is no structure at all. They somewhat have a structure, but that structure hasn't been tested yet. By bringing that type of personnel, this first year will be evaluation of that structure, of that current structure. It's a good deal. It's a good deal. This first year is actually a great deal. It's a I don't want to call it a bang or bust type deal, but it's actually the Lions couldn't be in a better position this 1 year. You get a chance to evaluate your staff and it gives you a chance to see what you evaluate the team. Give you a chance to evaluate as far as like those players that could be expiring going into the next offseason. It also prepares you to give you a setup to what you could prepare for 2020. 22. And so this first year is actually fantastic. First year is actually fantastic. So I just wanted to ramble a little bit as I always do. This is a small little channel that I based upon me just having an opinion about my thoughts about the Lions, not as if I'm a fan or not, but more so just as a Lion. Not as a Lion, but as a person that has an opinion. Forgive me for saying that, but I just wanted to say that I'm not a Lions fan, but I have something to say. I have watched from afar. I was a fan of a player, but not a fan of the organization. So somebody can say like, "Well, you're not a fan." I like that's my name is. That's why it is. I'm not a fan, and I'm okay with that. You know, I was a fan of the 49ers because they gave me a reason to be a fan. They gave me something to be a fan for. Not because they were winning. It was just they had an identity for me to support. You know, you could label it as the West Coast offense, but there was a balanced team, offense, defense, from the structure of Bill Walsh, not Bill Walsh. I think it's Ed DeBarlo who was the owner. If not, it was him and Carmen Policy and that sort of thing. But Bill Walsh, how they was assembling a team, offense, defense, and they had a style where it was like accountability, respectability. They called it the 49ers way. And if you really wasn't about the 49ers way, you had to leave. Versus bringing in a player or bringing in a regime that has done it away somewhere else and they try to implement what they've done somewhere else to this team. And that's what the Lions organization have been. They have never, as an ownership, they never had an identity. So it was kind of hard for me to be a fan of a team that has no identity. People have been fans of the Baltimore Ravens because they gave you an identity. People have been fans of the Buccaneers because they have an identity. Fans of the Steelers, the Packers, the Cowboys, the Washington, and so forth. All the different franchises because they gave you an identity. The Lions never gave you an identity to support. They gave you individual players. So I was a fan of Billy Sims, not Barry Sanders. And when Billy Sims got hurt, I left them. And my ship went to Jerry Rice and Joe Montana. So that's where I was at. So with that being said, Lions fan, I just wanted to ramble and babble about that. But if I were to emphasize my point, I would take Allen Robinson over Kenny Galladay right now for the same amount of money. All right, Lions fans, I salute.